Have you been downplaying your grief and loss? Do you find yourself saying, but I only lost, or, but my loss wasn't as bad as yours? Join me today in this live and learn why it's not helpful to be comparing our losses. For those of you who are here, if you want to comment #live, for those of you who are watching the video live, and those of you who are watching the replay, if you'll comment #replay. I want to just talk about this topic because I feel like this is something that's very common when it comes to grief, is that we all do it. We all compare our losses, or we hear somebody else's grief story and suddenly we downplay and dismiss our own pain or our own grief and sadness. And I think sometimes this happens when children are talking and sharing their grief stories, is that we start to ignore that your experience is your experience, and the pain you are having is very real. Our brains are hardwired to compare. We compare and we store and we figure out things like, is this good? Is it bad? Is it right? Is it wrong? And so it's only natural that we would do this with grief stories as well, telling our own grief story as well as listening to somebody else's grief story. And in the past, years and years and years ago, we did this, we were hardwired to figure out what was a threat and what was a cue of safety. And so we would have interpreted a story and then filed it away as, here's a reason not to do this, or here's why we should do this to stay safe. We don't have that need anymore, but our brains are still hardwired the same. And so we want to compare and say, oh, well, my loved one was 64 when he died, so that doesn't hurt nearly as much as your child being 5. Or my loved one was sick with cancer and dying for many months and we knew it was coming, which is very different than a death that was unexpected. Or even looking and trying to somehow compare as if there's a rating scale on whether somebody died of natural causes or died by suicide or by murder. The reality is none of these are comparable events. And the other part is, these events mean something very different to you and very different to me based on our experience in life. And if we have more to our grief journey, if we've lost multiple people through the years versus if this is our first loss. For instance, I had a client who came into the office and she was in her early 40s. And she had never lost anyone. All of longevity was in her family DNA. So she hadn't lost any family loved ones. And so when she had her first loss, it was very significant because she'd never experienced that kind of pain and grief. Where somebody else who may have had a grief journey that started when they were very young, for instance, for myself, I remember the very first funeral for my great-grandpa that I attended, and I was 5. And so my grief journey started at age 5, the introduction to the reality that we are only here for a short time, and that grief and loss is part of that circle of life. It became part of my grief journey very early on. For my youngest daughter, hers started when she was 2.5, and her dad passing away. So again, it's very different, and something that we shouldn't be comparing. I also wanted to just talk about how sometimes, instead of downplaying, we just need to own that these are our experiences and the grief journey that it has put us on. It doesn't mean we have to wear these losses as some sort of badge of honor or flash them where we can. I think it's more important that we understand that these losses are not comparable. They're all very different, and we each come into it with our own past experiences. And with this in mind, I would love for you to comment #myloss, so owning your loss that you have had and knowing that it is significant and meaningful to you, and it doesn't have to look like everybody else's. And if you're ready to take that next step in your child's grief journey, I would love for you to join me in my free 15-minute Grief to Healing phone conversation, where I will give you the #1 strategy that is personalized to your household in how to help your child go from grief to healing. I appreciate all of you being here, and I apologize that we weren't able to have this on Monday. I've been dealing with sickness, and so I am hoping to be back at our regular schedule for next week. I hope you all have a good week, and take care.